Hi folks, welcome to the dark edition of the B29 restoration project. So quick little update. Things have been progressing relatively well, and the whole airplane's got what we're expecting to be the last coats of primer on it. Both of the outer wing panels have been smooth, or have been sanded smooth. The horizontal stabilizers have been sanded smooth. Elevators, ailerons are covered and done. There's another video for that later on. Fuselage, center section, all of the top of the wing and the fuselage from pretty much the forward hatch all the way to about halfway back to the ventral fin on the vertical tail. That whole top section has been sanded smooth, and what I'm working on right now is getting the panel lines on the wing top done. For those who have never done panel lines, it's surprisingly easy, but it is also very frustratingly time consuming. I like to use chart pack graphic tape. The 1/32 matte is what I like. This is not the crepe paper one, it's the vinyl stuff. The product number is Bravo Golf 3101 Mike, so BG3101M. The crepe paper stuff, when you go to peel it off, it's hard once you put primer over it, and we'll get to that. You'll understand here in a minute. What you need is a good set of 3 views that shows all of your panel lines, a good ruler, multiple rulers, flexible ones and whatnot. You're not going to get everything perfect compared to 3 views, because 3 views are 2D. We're working on a 3D structure or part, so like you're going to have to sit there and make little adjustments here and there. Typically, I like to draw all the panel lines out with a pencil or a fine tip ultra fine Sharpie, and the way I do that is I start with the 3 views that have all the panel lines drawn out, and I figure out what the scale up factor is for the wingspan that I'm working on. 99% of the time, your scale factor for the fuselage is going to be different than the scale factor for the wing. The 3 views are never accurate to the full-scale airplane as far as the dimensions or your model. Again, you're not trying to make it perfect, you're trying to make it look correct. In this instance, on the B-29, it's not an extremely accurate airplane, so I'm not really worried about making it 100% correct. The wing airfoil is not correct for the airplane. The nacelles are different than what they should be because of the wing airfoil being off. The dihedral, like, there's lots of little things that are different for this airplane compared to what I would do for a scale airplane. So we're just working on making it look the part, not necessarily being the part of a scale accurate B-29, because this one is not. It was never intended to be, and it's far too much work to try and make it that way. You may as well just start with a different whole new airplane design. So anyways, let me get the camera here and I'll run you around. You can see I've got a laser level. Laser level is honestly your number one tool other than good rulers and stuff. Excuse me. You're gonna want a laser level. It's gonna make your life easy. You can see, especially in something like an airplane where we're working on 10 foot of span, having the laser level gets you a nice straight line the whole length. You can see here on the back side we've already got a couple of panel lines on. The laser light really just makes it super easy. Here I've got a nacelle in the way. I'll show you how I'm going to continue this line here to this line momentarily, but basically, since I can't really see this mark from almost 6 feet away, I just put a piece of masking tape here to mark a vertical edge, and then I bring the line there, and then I have another mark right here for the other end. And then it's just a matter of getting your chart pack tape, which, if I can find what I did with my little roll, I think this is the one here. It's just a matter of putting it down in your spot and pulling it the full length. One thing, since this is kind of a very narrow tape, if you pull it too hard, it stretches, and then when you put it on the surface, since it's stretched, it will pull away from the structure or the surface. So you don't want to put a lot of tension on the tape. You want to really just kind of let it lay flat on its own. And then the next most important thing you do, don't put your finger on it and wipe down the length. Tap along the length of it like you're tapping the surface. Just kind of tap, tap, tap all the way down the length. And what this does is it sets the tape where you're onto the surface without it going kind of wavy on you. Like I said, this stuff's only a 32nd of an inch wide. It does not take much for it to lose its straight line, or its linearity, I guess is the word to use. So you have to gotta be a little gentle with this stuff. And again, well, not again, but when you buy some, buy a lot, because you're gonna need it. Let's see if I can get a better view of this thing here. All right. That piece was not long enough, and pretty much once you stick it on, once you stick it onto the surface, especially if it's a little bit of a dusty surface like everything is when you've been sanding for hours on these things, it's almost impossible to reuse it. So sometimes it's better to just peel it off and start with a new piece. It's relatively inexpensive, this tape. But again, here I'm just working about halfway down, about a third of the way down the span of this. And I'm not gonna go and brush, I'm gonna tap on top of the tape as I work my way down it. That way it stays right down that line. You're gonna get waves in this stuff. It's gonna not stay straight perfect the whole length of this, especially when you're talking about 6, 8, 10 foot long pieces. So you gotta make it as best you can. Okay, we got that long one done. Now the next one here, we've got to put the piece between the nacelles. The way I figure out where exactly that needs to go, let me go get my longer ruler. Is I will take my ruler and I will run it vertical on the wing, and then what I will do is I will get the ruler to where the laser level, the vertical line, is running right down the edge of the ruler. And then I would take the mark and make a mark on the wing surface. Same thing here on the other side. Make adjustments to it as you need. What I just did here at the end where they were overlapping, I just took, again, the X-Acto nice and sharp up against the piece of panel line that you don't want, that you want to remove, in this case this end, put it here against the edge that we just overlapped it, push down on it until it clicks when you cut through, peel away, throw away what you don't need. So now that we've got that taken care of, the next deal is, okay, we have panel line tape, or we have tape where the panel lines are. How do you make them an actual like indented panel line, or in this case a flush panel line? Just take some rattle can primer sealer and really just paint over the tape. That's all you got to do. And then once you're with that, I do typically 3. Okay, sometimes sorry, battery died. So 3 or 4 coats of primer, sealer, filler, primer, really it doesn't matter. It's just rattle can stuff. As long as it's compatible with the primer that you used, in which case the Rust-Oleum primer works really well with the Evercoat DuraBuild stuff. Rust-Oleum is what I use up here in my area. Different parts of the country, really, Rust-Oleum works really well. Sometimes it doesn't. Down in Florida, I know the Rust-Oleum doesn't work worth a crap. Neither does the Krylon. But the DuPont automotive filler primer works really good. So whatever works in the area, use what you know works. Don't start using Rust-Oleum or whatever just because it's what I'm using. Use what works. So really, now I'm just gonna put up a box fan to help blow some of this overspray outside. I'm gonna spray the the panel line tapes with a couple, 3-4 coats or so, and then I'm gonna call it a day. Leave this to cure for a good 16 to 24 hours, and then if everything looks good when we'll pull the tape off of it, well, before we pull the tape, we'll scuff it with, I like to use a red Scotch-Brite pad, and then you can peel the tape off and you'll be left with a nice flush panel line. So that's what we're gonna do. I'm not gonna bother filming me spray paint because it's spraying paint. So when I get ready to pull the tape, scuff everything down, then I'll pull out the video camera and we'll show you the whole process some more. All right, folks, it is the next day now, and I've gone ahead and taken that red pad, that red Scotch-Brite pad, and scuffed all of the overspray off. This is the red Scotch-Brite pad. It's, like I said, it's kind of equivalent to about 400 grit sandpaper, so it works really nice in getting rid of 320 grit paper scratches. So you can still see a little bit of the difference in color of primer between the rattle can and then the not rattle can stuff. You can see a couple of places where I've sanded the primer off of the panel line tape. You don't have to do it this way. You can actually leave the primer on top of it, which you'll see in most of the areas the primer's still on top of the panel line tape. So now we're just gonna peel the tape off, and you can see as I'm peeling it away, you get a nice little ridge and an indentation there. That'll be your panel line. To get the rest of it, just take a X-Acto knife or a T-pin, anything with a sharp edge, and then just pick away at this spot here until you get a part of it picked up. And then you can peel it the rest of the way. What I started to say earlier in the video is there is a version of this tape that is not plastic or vinyl. It is more of a crepe paper, kind of like the birthday party streamers. You don't want to get that stuff because the issue with that is the primer on top of the crepe paper actually it ends up tearing apart as you try and peel it off. So you end up with a bunch of little bitty pieces, and then sometimes the paper will come off, but the adhesive backing on the paper will not come off the airplane, and then you're in there just digging away inside the panel line gap trying to get the rest of that tape out. So buy the stuff that I gave you the part number for, and you will not have that issue. I think it's about $5 or $6 for a little roll of this stuff. It's not the cheapest for what you're buying, but it works extremely well. I get my stuff typically off of Amazon. It's not a whole lot of work to make all this, to actually apply all this stuff. It's just time consuming. It's not hard. Sometimes if you like doing little tedious tasks like building cockpits and stuff, this is kind of fun to do at times. It really adds a lot of character to the airplanes. It adds a lot of depth and dimension to the surface instead of it just looking kind of like a blah plastic model. It adds a lot to it. The other nice thing about putting a lot of the surface detail in is if you don't like sanding, if you can see the theme here, I'm not a fan of sanding. It's just a necessary evil. But if you don't like sanding and you like adding things that look really, when you like making the airplanes look real, putting the surface detail with the panel lines and the rivet rows and everything, it adds so much for the eye to be attracted to, that if you casually forget or purposely decide not to do body work in areas, having all that detail distracts the eye from the areas that may not exactly be perfect, especially if you have a metal like a silver finish with scratches or whatnot that are easily seen from the paint job. But that's just how I am typically. Like I said, this airplane's been sanded down to 320, and then I use a red pad, which is about 400 over the whole thing. I really don't ever go that smooth of a sanding, especially on a warbird, unless the airplane was fairly common or fairly newer, something like P-51 or P-38, anything World War II or older, even Korea era. Once you start kind of getting into the century series of the jets, like in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, anything before that, I don't do a ton of sanding on it. I'll go down to 220, maybe 240, and I'll stop and then I start painting. Because really, especially for the World War II stuff, these things weren't perfect. There were scratches, there were dents. I mean, even airplanes brand new off the assembly line for stuff like that are built in jigs, you look at them and they've got waves and ripples all on the surface. There's not a whole lot of reason to go out here and block sand this thing and try and get a show car finish. These things aren't perfectly flat. They never were, even when they were brand new off the assembly line. Make it to where you're happy with it, and then make each project after that just a little bit more and more nice, or nicer than the last. That's always my goal, is the next project should always be as good or preferably slightly better than the last project in some way. Doesn't mean the whole airplane has to be better. It's just something, try something different. Like these little things, like doing the panel lines, the rivets. You're gonna figure out what you like, what you don't like. Don't be afraid to try something different, try something new. If you don't like it, as much as I hate sanding, you can sand the paint back off and start over again. So anyways, that's pretty much panel lining a B-29 wing. I'm not doing a whole lot of this, base for now at least. So y'all have a good one.